Welcome everyone to your video on ratios, and we're writing ratios as fractions and percents today. So some prior knowledge definitely being activated, and this video lesson is best when you use the template. So if you need to download that now or have the paper copy, get that ready and think about what you already know about percents and fractions and how can we think about that with ratios. A stop and think moment for us, which we love to do. Think about the images below here. What do all of these have in common? How could you describe the relationship between all three of these or individually? Here I notice we have 3 diamonds, 5 hearts. We have 3 red tiles to 4 blue tiles. 5 girls compared to 15 boys. And that's written 2 different ways there. So think about what do you notice they have in common and how could we describe this relationship? Well, what these are ratios. Ratios are simply a comparison of 2 quantities by division. So think about how we write a fraction before. So here is a little vocab for you. Comparison of 2 quantities by division. You can write these out as in word form 3 to 4, 3:4, you still say 3 to 4, or as a fraction, 3 to 4. So, in algebra, just meaning these can represent anything, not always 3 to 4. A, any number, to B, the other number. A to B, A to B. Ratios express a part to a part to a whole, or a whole to a part. Depends on how it's written. If it's written out in word form, your answer should be written in the same way. Generally, they are in simplest form, except improper fractions would stay improper fractions. So trying this before we start, the order of the numbers in the ratio is important. So the way the question is read is how we'd write them. So this first one says that what is the ratio of rectangles to total shapes? So I count my rectangles. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. 6 rectangles to how many total shapes? Well, I have 6, 7, 8 total shapes. There's 2 additional ones, so that's 8 total. Or I'd write that as 3 to 4. And again, you can write that with the word to also, but it should be that simplified version. See if you're ready for the next one. This one says the ratio of total shapes to triangles. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 total shapes to 2 triangles. So this would be compared as 2 to 1. Could be written as an improper or as with a colon. So thinking about order, how would we fill in the blanks here? At the store, the ratio of books sold to movies sold was 8 to 2. So this means that for every what? How many books were sold? We do our first number because that was the first one in the thing. 8 books that were sold, there were 2 movies sold. Or you could simplify that, right? For every 4 books sold, there was 1 movie sold. And then so reversing it, notice the movies, for every 1, there were 4 books. So paying attention to which number represents which. To set up a ratio, you need to know what numbers are being compared and set it up in fraction form. That's generally how we do it. So first item is listed is the numerator. So what comes first? The second one is going to be your denominator. Then simplify. But since it's a comparison of 2 numbers, this is where we go a little different. We do need to leave it as an improper fraction because if you change it to a whole number, then it's no longer comparing 2 numbers. So looking here, Jane has a bag that contains 3 bouncy balls, 4 marbles, 7 books, and 1 orange. Here's the data here. So what is the ratio of books to marbles? So we find our books, we have 7. Marbles, we have 4. So I would write this as 7 to 4. Marbles to books, notice we already have those numbers. That's in the other order though. We had 4 marbles to 7 books. So that would be 4 to 7. So it's about ordering numbers. And again, important note, we write them greater than 1 are improper fractions, not mixed numbers. And again, that goes back to the definition of ratio because you're comparing 2 quantities. Ratio of bouncy balls to marbles. We have 3 bouncy balls, looking at my table, to 4 marbles. So that is 3 to 4. The ratio of bouncy balls to total items is 3 to, total, I have to count all of these up. So I have 3 plus 7 is 10, plus 4 plus 1, 5 more, to 15. As a fraction, that's 3 to 15. This I can simplify because they share a factor of 3. So that's the same as 1 to 5. This is a great spot for you to see what you know, pause, and try, and then come back and see how you did. So use the information from the table to write a ratio as a fraction in simplest form. Ratio in simplest form, remember, is different than a fraction. There are 2 for you. See how you've done. You might have simplified different than I did, but our ultimate ending answer should be the same. Notice 45 over 1 isn't just 45 because then it would not be a comparison of 2 different quantities. Notice these next 2 before you start them. People. That includes adults and students, so you're going to have to do some adding. So there you have it. See how you did. We have 1 bus for every 51 people, and we have 2 adults for every 17 people. That last one might have been tricky. Remembering that trick, I knew these were both divisible by 3 because they're digits added to something that was divisible by 3. So now we are going to work on writing ratios as fractions and as percents. So using that prior knowledge that we know percents are per 100. Change a percent using a calculator. Remember, you can divide. Here's a little tip. Divide a numerator by denominator, round to the nearest hundredth, and move our decimal 2 places to the right, which is times 100, and then putting a percent sign. So we have 5 cups of trail mix that has 2 cups of raisins. What is the ratio of raisins to trail mix? So raisins came first, so we'd have 2 compared to 5 total. To change that to a percent, remember, you could do the decimal way and get this to a decimal, which is 0.4, then multiply by 100, or you could change your fraction to be out of 100 first by multiplying both by 20, and then we see 40 per 100 is 40% raisin to trail mix. What does the percent mean based on the situation? So that means, thinking about that raisins make up 40% of the entire trail mix. That's what that means. All right, one more here. How about out of your 460 minutes on Zoom each week, this is back when we were, doing that stuff, you spent 70 minutes in math. What would the ratio of math to your total Zoom be? So we'd have our math, which was 70, compared to our 460, which we'd then have to simplify. So 70 and 460 for sure share 10. So we'd have 7 out of the 46. As a percent, I'm going to probably want to divide 7 divided by 46. And I get a decimal of 0.1521, and it keeps going. So to the hundredths place. So this is approximately 15% of my day. And again, a spot for you to pause and see what you know, try on your own, and then come back and check in. Pause. All right, look at how you did comparing video games to shoveling and also Mr. Beast to PewDiePie. All right, a little bit more, a lot of content here. Another vocab word is equivalent ratios. We know equivalent means equal, so these are just ratios that have the same value, similar to equivalent fractions. So last weekend, Mrs. Kroska drove 250 miles in 4 hours. Mrs. Little drove 500 miles in 8 hours. Are these ratios equivalent? If not, who had a higher ratio of driving? So we have 250 miles in 4 hours. It's actually a rate too. Is that the same as 500 in 8? And so looking at comparing these, I have two options. I can see that to get from 4 to 8, it was times 2. And to get to 250 to 500, it's also times 2. So since that rate of change there, or that factor we changed them by is the same, then they are equal. Another thing you could do is simplify both of them. So I could do 250 divided by 4 and 500 divided by 8. And if they equal the same thing simplified, then they do. So I'd have 125 over 2 and 125 over 2. So they are equivalent. For the second one, Mr. Hansen's cookie recipe calls for 2 cups of flour to 8 cups sugar. Mr. Schaefer calls for 8 cups flour to 14 cups sugar. Are they equivalent? So 2 out of 8 compared to 8 out of 14, I can right away tell this is times 4, but this is not times 4, so they're not equivalent. Or if I simplified them, this simplifies to 1 out of 4, whereas this one simplifies to 4 out of 7. So those are not the same. So it appears that Mr. Schaefer has a higher ratio of flour to sugar. All right, last one of you try on your own. You can do it. You're doing great. This is a lot of info. So this one just says, Morning Glory sells 4 muffins for every 10 scones. Caribou sells 2 muffins for every 6 scones. So we're wondering are these ratios equivalent? And if not, who has the higher ratio? So you're going to try that and then come back and check. And then on the bottom it says select 2 ratios below that are equivalent to 6 to 10. So which ones are the same? Come back and check. So hopefully you're coming back to check that the first 2 were not equivalent. And on the bottom, C and D were both equivalent to 6 out of 10. And you can look at my work to see how I did it. You might have done it differently, so compare and contrast. All right, why don't you go ahead and give this one a try. This one's pretty common that we mess up. So we have 7 cups of trail mix A, and that trail mix A has 2 cups of M&Ms. 8 cups of trail mix B that has 4 cups of M&Ms. And your job is to write a ratio of M&Ms to total amount of trail mix for both A and B. So A here and B here, and then which trail mix has the higher concentration and why. I hope you had a good time reflecting on what you already know, a lot of prior knowledge, just kind of using old skills for new tricks. Have a great day.